Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to take a look at recent sales, all of them auctions, I believe, for mint on card vintage Star Wars figures. Lots of items from AFA/CIB that sold for big money. I bid on a few of these. I did win one. I didn't win the one that I really wanted, but that's the way it goes on eBay sometimes. But I find that it's almost not even worth bidding on AFA/CIB auctions because most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time they tend to go for above market value, at least my estimation of fair market value. So it's really tough to get a good deal from them. And the one I did win in this auction batch that I'm going to cover, I think I probably overpaid a little bit for it, but it's one I've kind of been wanting for a while, so I was okay with it. But let's go ahead and dig into some recent sales. All right. First of all, this is a seller I've talked about in other videos, and I did end up winning 2 baggies from this seller, and they arrived safe and sound, and they were packed really well. I mean, very, very well. So I'm very happy to report that Gold Star Tech, even though I was a little worried about them because they seem to be focused on like electronics, and they have like 280,000 transactions, so you don't know how they're going to pack a vintage Star Wars toy. My 2 baggies were bomb-proofed, better than I get back from the grading companies, believe it or not. So if you see anything else that gets listed by this seller, rest assured it's going to arrive safe and sound, at least mine did. And here was a 21A Death Star droid. It was a punched example with a price sticker. AFA 80 was the score on it, and it sold for $725, which I thought was very fair. Free shipping as well, and 80, 85, 85. So 285 subscores. Again, it was a punched example, but $725 I thought was a very fair price for what that was. Here was a 41 back Darth Vader mint on card, and I don't know if it was because of the photos or what, but this one went really low. It did have some faint creases to the card back, and you can see that on the left-hand side there, a fairly pronounced crease. But again, it's an ESB Darth Vader clear blister, so I was a little surprised that it sold for the price that it did. I would wager this would probably get a 75 grade. He did mention that there was like an iridescent sheen defect on Darth Vader's cape, and you can kind of see that there on the right-hand side. It kind of looks like an oil slick. So that's kind of the effect that you get sometimes with Newton rings for CGC graded comics. But this is actually on the cape. It's not like a reflection in the photo. So, and he did note that. So that maybe held it back a little bit. Probably gets a 75 for the figure score. Maybe gets an 80 for the blister and a 75 for the card for an overall 75. That would be my guess on that. $325 was the final winning price on that as well, which I thought was a great deal. Just given that higher grade, you know, let's say this was about 80 grade condition, you're probably talking closer to 800 bucks plus for any sort of ESB Darth Vader. They're just very, very pricey usually. So $325, that's borderline a steal. Here was another 41 bag. This was the Rebel Commander, and it looked like it had faint yellowing to the blister there. Unpunched, no price sticker, but you can kind of see that towards the bottom of the stem there. It's kind of cloudy, so not sure what's going on with the blister other than some yellowing to it. That one sold for $280, which this is probably a yellowed 80 grade. It's in overall very good condition, just unfortunately had yellowed over time. So $280, probably closer to $500, I would guess. Maybe not that high, I don't know. The Hoth Rebel Commander is kind of one of those figures that most people don't care about. I really like him a lot. I wouldn't mind having an ESB Hoth Rebel Commander. I've got the Trilogo, but that, you know, if I can find one of those with a clear blister in similar condition, I'd pay, you know, $300-400 bucks all day long. Next up was another Darth Vader, and this begins, and I think through the end of this video, are all of the CIB auctions from about 2 weeks ago, July 21st. And this was an AFA 85 12-back Palatoy Darth Vader. I mean, as good as it gets right there. You can see the beautiful Palatoy logo, unpunched, no price sticker, 85, 85, 90 were the subscores. Now, during the height of the collectibles market bubble, this one would have sold closer to $3 grand all day long. All day long, I think this would get $3,000. $20.75 is a pretty dramatic price drop relative to where this one was selling about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I mean, this is a great deal, I think. Even after you factor in the shipping costs and taxes, you're still you're probably $2,300 or so. And for an AFA 85 with such high subgrades of 85, 85, 90, unpunched, I mean, that is a absolute stunner. And to get that for the price that you did, I think that was a great deal. And, I didn't see anything that was really concerning on the Vader himself, no kind of frosting or anything like that as to what maybe could hold the price back. I just think that was one of those figures that has come down in price. It's not hard to find a Palatoy 12-back Vader, but in such a high grade, I was expecting $2,500 plus, quite honestly. That was a good deal. Next up was that Meccano 20-back Jawa, the most common of these rectangular card Meccanos, 20-backs, and this one was a clear blister as well, which was nice. Some of these do turn yellow over time. AFA 75. That one sold for $562 and change plus shipping, and that's a pretty good deal there. I mean, for my uncirculated 80 grade for this exact same item, I paid closer to $900 if memory serves. So that was a really good deal for an AFA 75, I thought. Next up, another one of those Takara 7-inch C-3POs sold. This is the Japanese Takara. This was graded CAS 80 plus. And it's weird that CIB, which is AFA, were selling CAS graded items. I've seen a few over the years that they've sold. So they must consign items. And it raises a really weird question to me. Why is AFA, which is owned by the same company as Hakes, why are they using eBay to sell instead of keeping all of those fees in-house and having Hakes sell the items? I don't get it, other than maybe Hakes is just swamped with stuff. But to me, it makes zero sense to have these items sold on eBay and pay eBay the fees that they charge, which are egregious, versus keeping all those fees in-house with AFA and Hakes. So I don't get it. I don't know why. It seems like, given that they're underneath the same umbrella, you would think that the parent company would dictate that if AFA/CIB gets in some items to sell, they have to use Hakes. And again, it might come down to the fact that Hakes is not it's not instantaneous, and maybe the owner/consigner wants the money now. Maybe they're struggling. Who knows? But it is weird to me. But this was a CAS 80 plus that sold for $787, which is a bargain. I forgot to look up what the AFA example sold maybe a month or so ago, but it was a lot more than $787. So 80, 85, 90 were the subscores on that. And I know that CAS items don't traditionally command the same price that an AFA item will, but to me, paying $2,000, which I'm guessing is what it sold for. It might have been closer to $1,500. I don't remember the exact number, but $787. That is, again, a borderline steal for one of those very difficult to find Takara 7-inch figures mint on card. Next up, this is an interesting one. This is a 48-back Nikto on a Walrus Man card, labeled as an error, Nikto miscard. I would bet that if you looked up this certification number, it's a very early certification number, because I don't think this is an error. If I had to guess, this more likely is a salesman sample. And as the 65-back figures were being, manufactured and, prepared for release as part of the Return of the Jedi line, a lot of these 48-backs, which are all transition cards, first, 48 characters, ESB and Star Wars characters, I would imagine that this was most likely a salesman sample. And I know that a number of those were accidentally labeled by AFA as miscards, when in fact they are actually, salesman samples. No way to prove that. There's no, unless you have the documentation for it. But just given how beat up it is and things like that, you would think that this was most likely a salesman sample, but who knows? It's difficult to know for sure. It's still a great item either way, and it sold for a lot of money either way. It sold for $22.25 plus shipping, and again, I would be curious to know, if you sent this back in, whether it would qualify for a salesman sample, kind of first shot prototype, very similar to what the Leia Bush is on the Boba Fett card back that's at auction right now on Hakes. And by the way, if you haven't looked at the price on that, the auction's not over for another 2 days as of the making of this video. With the premium, it's over $30,000 now. It's just unbelievable how high that thing went. Incredible price that I'm sure the final sales price will be even crazier. But anyway, this is a common combination, so it very well could be a factory error, because I have seen a number of examples of Nikto on this particular card back. So maybe a certain batch of them in Hong Kong were just misplaced. But given that it's a 48 back, I don't know how it could possibly be a miscard, given that Nikto didn't appear on card backs, I think, until the 65 back. So I tend to think that this has to be a salesman sample where it was mocked up and the salesmen were taking these around to point at, the retailers to try and get them excited about the next wave of new figures for the Return of the Jedi line. So there is no Nikto on a 48 pack. So very cool item though. Next up was an El Regreso del Jedi Argentinian Top Toys Chief Chirpa. Osito Ewok is the label on the name pill there. It did have the blister support because it was a very low 60 score for the blister, probably a cracked blister. Those blisters are very fragile. Overall 70 grade. Here's the back of the Top Toys card backs. Really, really cool. The only figures that were made for the Top Toys Argentinian line are Logray, Luke Jedi, Chief Chirpa, Yoda, which we just covered in a recent video, and then the Stormtrooper and Darth Vader. I believe those are I think those are the only figures that were actually made on this particular card back. Maybe Chewbacca, I can't remember. Top Toys Chewbacca, that sounds right to me. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I know that Lando Skiff-Guard was not made on this particular card back. But this is a desirable one. It sold for $709, which I thought was a pretty fair deal. You don't usually see Chief Chirpa mint on card. The most common being the Stormtrooper and Darth Vader. But that's a very cool item for $709. Next up was a Meccano Return of the Jedi La Guerre des Étoiles Reese, and this one was still a clear blister. Very nice example. AFA 80 on this one. 80, 85, 85. Meccano Star Wars. $537 was the final sales price on that. There's a good look at the back with the multi-language back there. Very, very cool. Would have liked to have bid on that. Unfortunately, a lot of these items were ending on Sunday night, and I was right in the middle of flying to Boston and Maine for my trip. So I didn't get, I was literally in the air, and I didn't feel like setting any snipes up because I didn't know how much money I was going to be spending during this trip. And it's a good thing I didn't buy anything because the trip was pretty pricey. My wife's birthday's coming up. I had to drop some major coin on a nice piece of jewelry for her, as well as like a $400 dinner. So I've done my part for my wife's birthday. And we also got to go to the Red Sox game, as I've already talked about at length. Next up was a Toll Toys Return of the Jedi 65 back with the free Neonum offer. So we've talked about this one before. This is cool because it's a 65 back, but it has the 48 back Neonum offer that you see on the US cards. Unpunched, no price sticker, clear blister, AFA 85. And it's labeled Kenner Star Wars, but it's really a Toll Toys release, right? It's got the Toll Toy, the Australia New Zealand address on the back for the Neonum mail away. And so I don't know why they call it Kenner Star Wars. It really should be Toll Toys Star Wars, but who am I to judge? That one sold for $12.25. Big number on that, but you'd expect that for an AFA 85. Anything Toll Toys is going to be very pricey. Next up was a Kenner Canada. I got two different Kenner Canada Ewoks. The first one being Paplu, a punched example, AFA 85. That one sold for $305. Very good deal on that one. These are made in Mexico for the U.S. and Kenner markets. And this one, I don't think it says. Does it say anywhere made in Mexico? I'm sure it does. I'm just being dumb right now, and I can't find it. But Paplu, I know, Paplu and Lumat were only made in the Lily Letty factory. But they made some for Canada, and they made some for the U.S. market, is obviously the Mexican Lily Letty card backs as well. But this one, again, sold for $305. Good deal. And then here's the Lumat. Obvious discoloration to the torso, which is a tip that I always recommend. Anytime you're going to buy a Lumat mint on card, take a look at that torso because it does discolor. And, you know, it got an 85 for the figure score here. So this is probably discolored since grading. They would give it a 75 now. That seems to be the consensus. And that's okay. You know, it's not the end of the world if you got one where the figure score is no longer applicable. It probably still gets the overall 80 very easily. 80, 85, 75. They're still going to give it the 80 overall. I've got a Trilogo in a very similar format where the other subgrades are so high. The figure score, I think, got an 80, 85. It's really more like a 75, you know, so I think it's probably still okay. Anyway, that Kenner Canada Lumat sold for $290, and there's the back of the card on that one as well. So beautiful examples for two Lily Lettys for the Canadian market. Now on to the Trilogos, and most of these went higher than I expected. Some of them substantially higher, where I was like, my jaw was on the floor. Here was the Rancor Keeper AFA 80. That one sold for $382, which is not terrible, but that one is a little more than I was expecting. I would argue that if it had been anybody else other than CIB or AFA listing this one, it probably would have sold in the high twos, like 275 to 285. So it was a little high on that one. C-3PO removable limbs. I just saw one like 2 months ago, same grade. It might have been punched, I don't remember, but it sold for like $275, AFA 80. This was an AFA 80, admittedly punched, but $450 is a really high number. Very, very high number. You'll have to excuse the background noise. There is a major thunderstorm going that literally just started after I started filming this, so we'll have to deal with the noise. Here's the one I did buy. This is the Lobot Trilogo AFA 80. It was a punched example. $511 is what I paid plus taxes, plus shipping. So it's really more like $575, which is too much. I mean, don't pay that. Don't pay that. Don't be dumb like me. But it's one I've been wanting. It's a tougher one to find. I kind of put it in the same ballpark as like Nyan and Admiral Akbar. It's not Emperor's Royal Guard or TIE Fighter pilot difficulty for the Trilogo, but it's that next tier down with like Admiral Akbar and you know, players like that, like those secondary characters. Not a lot of them pop up graded in high grade, but I paid $575 after taxes and shipping. I slapped it on my PayPal credit. I'll pay it off eventually, but it's nice to finally get it. It did arrive safe and sound. They packed it very well. Very, very happy with it. I'm sure I'll do a unboxing video with some recent mint on cards. I picked up 2 awesome mint on cards on Facebook that were great deals. Primo. They have not arrived yet. I told them to wait to ship until I got back into town, but that's what I paid. I'm not saying you should pay that. I wouldn't recommend paying that much, but that's what I paid. I did bid on the Barada as well. I already have a Barada CAS 75 plus. This one was an AFA 80. I was going to let my buddy Matthew C bid on it, but then he said he wasn't going to bid on it. So I think I bid on this one. I can't remember. I think I did bid on it, but maybe I turned my snipe off because he said he was going to bid on it. So don't quote me on that. I can't remember, but after he told me he wasn't going to bid on it, I feel like I set my snipe up, but maybe I turned it off in the end. I can't remember. But I've got a 75 plus with the Clipper offer. This one did not have the Clipper offer, but this one was just the standard, but it was unpunched and it was a higher grade. That one sold for $590, not a bad deal. I think my snipe, which I may or may not have activated, I can't remember, it was set for $560. So I wouldn't have won it anyway. That's a little high though. $590 plus shipping and taxes. You're talking close to $675. That's too much. Don't pay that. The AFA 80 Trilogo Darth Vader. This one was relisted, so I'm assuming it sold, and then the person who was the high bid, didn't pay because this one just got relisted. It has not ended yet. $750 was the final winning bid on it. Not terrible. Not terrible. That's the price I'd probably pay, to be honest with you. It was unpunched. I think mine's a punched example, CAS 80. It was a card 75, which seems a little harsh to me. I'm looking at it. I don't see much that's wrong with the card. There's one little faint crease. I mean, I can't figure out why certain cards get 80s and why they get 75s. I mean, there is some edge wear to it, but it's very light. I mean, 75, that's a very low 75. I mean, to me, 75 is too low. And it got rounded up for the overall to an 80, but that just seems really harsh to me for the card score. But $750 is a price I'd pay, quite honestly. That's a very nice example. Here's this. I know I bid on this one. Okay, I know I bid on this one. So I think I did turn off the Barada because I bid on this one. This one was the Ugnaught, which I want to get on the Trilogo. It was AFA 80. It didn't mention it on the label, but this, I believe, is a Meccano blister. It's a larger Meccano, thin, taller style blister. The standard Palitoy blisters are small, like really, really tight around the Ugnaught, a little rectangle. This is a larger rectangle, narrow, and much taller than the figure, and I think that this is a Meccano blister, but don't quote me on that. 80, 85, 85, BOE, Blacked Out Ewoks, fellow YouTuber. Subscribe if you are not a member. I'm sure he'll correct me in the comments, but I think that is what is a Meccano blister. But I bid on this one. It sold for such stupid money. $760? Have you people lost your minds? I mean, why did this... See, look, card 80 on this one. And I would argue that the card on this one is not nearly as nice as the Vader that got a 75. You can see much more pronounced edge wear on it. Look at that. Look at all that edge wear. Look at that. How did this get the 80 for the sub score, and then the Darth Vader, which was much cleaner? I don't see any creases or anything on this Vader. So this is what drives me crazy with grading Trilogos. Trilogo grading is so hit or miss. You never know what you're going to get if you send one of them in. So I've almost given up trying to send in Trilogos because you don't know how they're going to grade them. And even, I mean, this is a perfect example where why did this card get an 80 and then the Vader got a 75? So anyway, I'll get off my rant. But anyway, $760 on this one was insane. I think my bid was $605, which I thought was too high. And I know that it had the Meccano blister, which was probably why it sold for what it did. But what made me angry was that Gold Star Tech, who we've already talked about, had an AFA 80 standard blister that ended right after this, and it sold for like $380. And unfortunately, because I was so angry about losing this one, I forgot to activate my snipe on the one that Gold Star Tech had that was ending like 20 minutes later. So I lost both of them. So that just shows you what an idiot I am. I mean, I really want an Ugnaught on the Trilogo, and I lost both of them. So, and there probably won't be another one that pops up forever. Here's another one that was complete insanity. This is a standard Bib Fortuna, standard, Trilogo blister, AFA 80, that sold for $860. I just literally 6 or 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, I bought a UKG 80 for like $275 shipped from the UK. I paid $275 for it. That's US dollars, $275 for a UKG 80. It's not an AFA 80, I get that. But that's like 2.5, 3 times what this, this one sold for 3 times what I paid for mine. So this is what I'm talking about towards the beginning of the video, where it almost doesn't even make sense to bother bidding on CIB items because they go so far above fair market value. So that one was insane. The Ramba also was insane. AFA 80 sold for $1,008. I mean, I was thinking like $500, $550 max. I mean, you can see a bunch of scratches on either the card or the acrylic case. I mean, why did this go for $1,000? I have no idea. The R5D4 is complete insanity as well. Now, I bought mine 2.5 years ago. I looked it up. I bought it 2.5 years ago. It's an AFA 80 punched example, just like this. This is a punched example, AFA 80. I paid $375 for mine. $375. This one sold for $1,301. What is going on? I have no idea why this one sold for $1,300. That is complete and total insanity. Don't pay that. I wouldn't even pay $600 for this. I mean, the R5D4 is awesome. I get that. And I get that there hasn't been many of these on eBay lately. But $1,300 is absolute insanity. Here's another Ugnaught from a different seller. This one was a 75 grade 65 back Ugnaught, AFA 75 clear blister. That one sold for $261. And then here was another KB Toys 2-pack with Leia Bush with the Gamorrean Guard. That one sold for $300. Again, right in line with where those have been selling recently. So I think both of those prices were perfectly adequate. But I'm still angry about some of these Trilogos that sold, and I shouldn't be. I'm being selfish. I know I got the Lobot, so I should be happy with my Lobot. But some of these other prices, especially the Ugnaught, the Bib Fortuna was complete insanity. The Ramba, and then the R5D4. I can't make sense of it, but hopefully you can. If you ended up paying that, no offense, I'm not trying to criticize anyone that paid those prices. It's just it's a little far above what I'd be willing to pay. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.